Hello, we're the group called, we're having an exploratory investigation into the multicultural events for Dublin 8 area. Our group comprises of 3 people, which is Jean Byrne, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us tonight. Jean brings to the table, her background is as director of the Crafts Council of Ireland. She is founder and director of a company called Design 21, which is a strategic planning for new models of learning in the city. And Jean's passion really is open learning and bringing these whole these new learning models to the city of Dublin through understanding the needs of the city and bringing these. Leonor is a corporate events organizer and a producer with an understanding of logistics and planning for major events and stuff. She is a Spanish national living in Dublin and very passionate about the use of open spaces and building communities around open spaces. And I myself come I work in marketing communications in an advertising agency. So what I bring to the table is looking at finance and sponsorship and an understanding of brand communication in this area. So just opening opportunities for CSR initiatives and how they might help build community in better ways. Okay, so let me just talk about a little bit about our project. Our areas of interest and how our group came together. We were passionate about understanding the multiculturalism and inclusion in society, about open learning, about the better uses of public spaces, and basically positive city campaigns, which is about loving the city we live in. And so from that, we sort of started looking at the population of Ireland and looked at that urban living, scary urban living statistic. And 60% of Ireland's population currently live in urban areas, and it has increased by 80% by 2050. And the other scary statistic is in the last 20 years in Dublin, where it's increased by 62%. Where now they have a huge amount of people living in apartment blocks in the city, and a huge amount of people from foreign nationals into Ireland. What that has brought, though, has been good. You know, it brings a huge amount of diversity to the city, bring new ideas and creativity and cultural vibrancy. And the other major statistic that we found is that in Dublin 8, half the population is actually made up of foreign nationals of mixed culture and mixed religion. One of the key, things that the next part of our research is where we actually drill down into the census, into the census to really understand what the breakdown of that, what that was. And so we still looked and thought, okay, well, 20,000 of those people are Catholic, and another 5,000 of them are actually sort of other religions, and we'll see later on in the deck that actually the majority of these people are Muslim community living in this area. Still half that population are of Irish, but a major breakdown in for Dublin 8 that 50% of the population is foreign nationals has a major impact. So the Muslim community is one of the most affluent communities in this area. They have an established church, an established educational board for just dealing with their type of education and how their children are brought up. So they have Muslim schools, they have English education classes to ensure that adults are adapted into society. They have women's programs to help women integrate better. They have shops, they have restaurants, and they have Irish Muslim magazines and their own websites and their own online presence in lots of ways. So they are one of the most established communities in this area. Now, that's not saying that is all made up of one group. They are still of major nationalities. Okay, great device, but our interest is in providing events and how people could how people could integrate. So our initial research was desk research, which I've covered a little bit of, so census, an understanding of opening learning models, what's actually happening in other communities abroad, and then looked at some of the other initiatives that were happening in Dublin City Council already with the Sharrock Group, and looking at future trends on society. And we also walked through the streets of Dublin just to see what was happening and what facilities and amenities were available. So we looked at some of the events that are currently taking place, so especially around the Dublin Co-op. There are a number of Fusion Sundays, there's soccer fests, there's Open Kite Fest, there's Liberty Festivals, there's opera, a number of different things happening around Wood Quay, and second-hand markets. And then we looked at educational provisions. I think there's something like 52 different educational institutions in Dublin 8 area, so and community groups, and so there's repurpose of schools and stuff there. And so there's just colleges. So it stems across all sectors of education. And then we looked at some of the community spaces that were available and some of the things that are already happening around picnics in the parks or open events around Wood Quay. And Guinness's, some open spaces, just to see how we would use these spaces and what we could do to help help with events. So we looked at some things happening around the Dublin City Co-op, and then we went out and we interviewed some of these community leaders to see what was happening and how they could help us understand these whole issues of integration and how we could make it work. So we spoke to various people from the Lantern Group, to community officers, to community leaders, and immigration officers and educational authorities. We conducted telephone interviews and online questionnaires and street interviews. We then, the type of questions were asked were sort of what nationality, how long were you living in the area, would they, and then we sort of, and asked them, had they got much contact with non-Irish people, and, what sort of things were they interested? Would they be interested in? Did they attend street feasts? Were they interested in festivals or that sort of sort of event? So our findings, from our findings, we that there are plenty of occasions for communities to mix at schools and with their own groups, but cultures seldom mix, and they seldom have common territories in which they share. We looked at the Lantern Group and deep dived into the Lantern Group, and that was really a group that hosts sort of over 50 immigrants, sort of different events. It's a charity group, but it hosts events like language classes and music classes and stuff like that. People who meet on a regular basis. Another area that we deep dived into was the Dublin Co-op. A long-standing event in Newmarket Square, with regular things happening, but not a huge amount of integration, mainly geared towards Irish people. You have a little mixture of it, but not really talking to each other. And really what we sort of found was that there were many barriers to this integration. So Irish seldom integrate with foreign nationals except on big commercial occasions, in difference to Irish people who actively engage. Like there's an indifference by Irish people to actively engage with foreign nationals, and they maybe something we won't deep dive into at this point in time, but parks tend to be used by non-Irish nationals rather than Irish people. There are language barriers, there are multicultural events that are run by religious groups, and we already know and understand in Irish society where there's a bit of a backlash against the church, so religious events aren't something that people particularly want to participate in. And also that whole issue around Dublin 8 made up of many single mums, so limited appeal with the current offerings that are happening in Dublin 8. There are not many things there that are of great interest to mums with kids. And also the other area that was interesting was that from a research that task-oriented concepts entice participation, and that means, you know, sports and things like that that are much more involved as groups than individuals. They tend to work better. I realise I'm up against time here, so I might skip through some of this, but some of these, you know, again, I won't skip through some of those concerns, but so what we'll just do here is we'll just talk a little bit about the, you know, having done all that research, we found that we were faced with quite a few goals and quite a few challenges, and our project wasn't going to manifest itself in a solution, because there were much bigger issues that had to be dealt with. So we came up with an idea. It isn't worked out, and what we have is a process to get us to the next stage, because there's much further research needed to see how it would work. So what I'll just do is talk a little bit about what we think our goals and objectives were, to design a series of events which help to shape the growth and development of this new multicultural society, and find hooks or promote curiosity to help bring people together. And then the other area was to help people reclaim their public spaces, because we found out that there was a lot of things happening behind closed doors, and because of that, there wasn't a lot of visibility around what was actually happening. So the Irish were having events in one corner and multinational groups in another. So what we felt was that these open spaces would help people reclaim it and help transform new spaces. So I'll hand you over to Leonor, who will just take you through our concept on Share the Square.
Thank you, Suzanne. So our idea is called Share the Square, and it's just very simple. It's bring communities together to share an open space. We identified that Newmarket Square was the perfect place to address some of these concerns. And we also identified that this square has been the prime center since medieval times of this area of Dublin. And also we found out that Dublin City Council embraces the development of the square as a public market and as a public open space. So to allow this to happen, the tool that we will use as a facilitator to engage direct communication between communities is a table. So we came with this concept of enable with the table. The table is just a physical table that enable conversations, interactions between the communities. And we will need a number of tables that will have to be purchased and stored by Dublin City Council to facilitate these regular meetings and community activities. We have seen that the similar initiatives of this nature have enjoyed great success in the past, like a street feast, as you can see in these illustrations. And we have identified 4 different themes that we think that that language will not be a barrier, and those themes are food, games, craft, and drama. So to take you through the development plan, as Suzanne said, is basically an approach to project development. So the first step, having talked to all these groups, we need to establish relationships within these community groups and bring them together. So people from the Lantern Group, Fusion, Sunday, Dublin Co-op, bring them together and engage in one of these enable the table activities. And these will lead to reveal passions, ideas, skills that they have within these groups, and we can merge them together into something much more powerful and for wider audience. And we will then recruit volunteers to facilitate the first event in the Market Square outdoor area. Then we were thinking of testing with one of the events that is already happening in New Market Square, but at the moment it's an indoor event, and we will bring it outside. So you can see there a sample of different activities that are happening. After that, we will redefine the proposition with all this community feedback, approach Dublin City Council to fund event and organize the logistics and the storage, promote through community groups, schools, website, posters, etc., and to launch it. And
I know we've gone way over points, so I'm not going to really indulge. But my conclusion is that really the work that we've done and all the research that we've done, we feel that our group to launch not just a virtual event, but to launch a real event, that it needs a little bit more deep diving in research to actually be more inclusive with the companies that we're working with. So thank you, and thank you very much for all the help that we've got from everybody else. And a very big thank you. A very big thank you to Teresa for putting up with us. Thank you.
Thanks.